Have you given any instruction to your current office, folks who work in your office right now, about whether or not they can use personal emails to do any business, whether it be campaign or state business?
We haven't done that recently. We've had a policy in place since I became governor. We have a very elaborate ethics and code of conduct policy that I know my staff the last few days talked about. It's one of the advantages in the governor's office of having a chief legal counsel. Brian Hagedorn and his team administer that. So all of my staff, as well as all my cabinet, go through the training in those ethics standards and in the code of conduct, and then ultimately sign off on a document that certifies that they've gone through the training and that they're willing to live up to those standards. And so we make it very clear. I even personally now, as governor, carry two different devices, a BlackBerry that's exclusively for state-related communications, and then a personal iPhone that I have for things that aren't state-related.
There have been so many people saying, why don't you answer questions, specific questions that people are asking you? And do you worry that the longer you don't, people may feel you have more to hide, or what's your calculation there?
No, it's pretty straightforward. For almost 3 years, a Democrat district attorney in Milwaukee County, and the largest district attorney's office in the state, went through those 27,000 plus emails. They went through all the other communications they looked at. They conducted interviews, and at the end of that time, after they issued charges about other individuals, including initially one that was the impetus for the investigation, which came from my office, the individual, the veteran that was involved in the Veterans Organization that we raised concerns about with Operation Freedom, the one-day event that involves providing military personnel, their families, and veterans a day of relief at the Milwaukee County Zoo. That was the impetus for this entire thing.
Do you understand why people would want to know, as a manager, whether or not you were aware of the emails and the wireless email system that was happening in your office?
No, I understand, but I always say, don't look at anything I say. Look at what a district attorney's office did. Not one that was of my own party, but one that's led by a Democrat, went through it. Obviously, as you all know, covering those stories, went in extensively into other cases, brought charges forward where appropriate.
Governor Mary Burke is saying that you've lowered the standard for campaign ethics and the ethics of the governor's office. How do you respond?
Again, I'll let her comments speak for themselves. I think if people look at what we have in the governor's office, I think our standard in terms of code of conduct and ethics is as high or higher than any governor's had in the past in terms of what we expect from state employees. As I mentioned yesterday when I talked to Craig Gilbert, the Journal Sentinel, I talked about how in the past there have been many governors in both parties who, for example, have had cabinet members have the expectation to be a part of fundraising activities. I don't do that. I make it very clear the best thing for the people that work for me, whether it's in my office or in my cabinet, the best thing they can do for me is to conduct good policy. I think good policy is ultimately good politics because it helps the people we serve in this state. And so I think my record as governor speaks for itself.
How often is Keith Jilks communicating with your staff now as your campaign advisor, and how often is he communicating with your chief of staff, the rest of your staff?
I'm not involved in those sort of communications. He doesn't talk so much with me. Stephen Thomas, my campaign manager, talks with me frequently, but I wouldn't know a time frame or things like that. But again, we have a clear distinction between things that are political and official. I mean, like I said, I even got to the point now where as governor, when I first came in, I went to the extent of having separate, and kind of outdated as my kids say, on the official side, I still have a BlackBerry. My personal phone's an iPhone, but I keep those two separated. And if somebody contacts me about something personally that involves state business, I forward it to the state account, so that's a part of the public record.
Why didn't you do that when you were county executive?
Because I just had one phone, so I kept it all together.
But certainly the district attorney was looking for whether anything was illegal. Mm-hmm. And some people may believe that you knowing about there being a separate email system in your office would be maybe not illegal, but unethical. How would you respond to that? I mean, people would want to know whether you were holding up an ethical standard in that office.
Well, again, I think you look at the things that we've done, it's very clear from the district attorney's standpoint that they looked at things at great length and great detail, and that's why I point out they closed the investigation.
It's been a week now since these were released, almost a week, and there's been a barrage of negative stories about you here and around the country, as you know. How much does this hurt you in your reelection?
Well, I mean, I think in the end, I think the reason why some want the story to continue, nationally, it's actually, I saw in Washington after the first day or so, most of the stories were about whether or not it was overblown, and a sleeper story. I think Politico, The Post, the New York Times, and others, if I remember right, have all had various headlines that said it was kind of a dud after the first day or two. I think it's no shock to me that the chairwoman of the DNC was in town last Wednesday, that the DGAs jumped in at the DPW.